and in the NFL, we saw several teams cancel practice on Thursday. We knew yesterday that a couple of teams were going to, specifically Washington, which had a scrimmage set at FedEx Field. The Cardinals, Bears, Broncos, Packers, Colts, Chargers, Jets, and Titans joined the Washington football team in not practicing on Thursday. Other teams considered it, talked about it, decided the right thing for them to do was to go forward. It was a team-by-team, case-by-case, city-by-city type of a determination. At the end of the day, the NFL and the NFL Players Association issued a joint statement showing that there is unity between labor and management. Now, how far that goes to each and every team and management of each and every team remains to be seen, but they made it clear via the joint statement that there is a united movement more than ever to support one another in these challenging times, and shared anger and frustration, most recently as a result of the shooting of Jacob Blake. So that was a positive development, Shireen, and the Lions were at the forefront on Tuesday, and 2 days later, 9 more teams choose not to practice. And that's a lot to give up a day of practice when we're in a compressed preseason environment with no joint practices, no preseason games, limited opportunities to get ready. It shows you how important this issue is to a lot of the NFL's players and coaches, that there was a willingness to shut it down for a day and focus on these issues instead.
Yeah, no question. And you can't criticize either side, Mike. For those teams that chose to sit out practice, and a lot of those coaches made those decisions before they ever talked to their teams. You know, Cliff Kingsbury had some great comments, and a bunch of them did, and it was fantastic. But those teams that chose to practice yesterday and will choose to practice today, I don't think you can criticize them either. You know, as the Giants pointed out, I think it was Leonard Williams who said it, you know, these young guys need a chance to make the roster, and they need every day to prove to the team that they should be on the roster, and losing a day of practice is huge for them, and you get that. So you can't criticize the teams that chose to practice, and you can't criticize those that didn't, because it was important to them. It was bigger than football that day. So, you know, teams made a team-by-team decision on what their leaderships, what it meant to them, and how they wanted to proceed and go forward. And even those teams that practiced, I think this was big for them. They at least talked about it in their meetings yesterday, and I'm sure they'll continue to talk about it. It's a big deal.
Well, and I will say this, though. For the teams that did practice, there is a chance that the head coach did not properly read the room. There's a chance. And there may be an aftermath. There may be a blowback. There may be a reaction. Haven't seen any of that yet, which I think is encouraging. But I think that's the challenge for every coach in a situation like this, taking the temperature of the locker room and deciding what the players collectively want. Do they want to practice? Are they able to focus on practicing football? Could it become a potential risk to them if they go out and try to practice on a day when they're distracted by events going on elsewhere and distracted by a desire to talk about social justice issues and not focus on football for the day? So it was a team-by-team type of a thing. And we'll see. Maybe for some teams, they practiced yesterday, they don't practice today. Some teams had yesterday off. What are they going to do today? So this is going to continue to linger through the weekend. But I think the fact that the NBA is going forward makes it easier to come to the conclusion that the NFL will go forward. But, you know, there's still that nagging possibility that in any given moment, another video is going to emerge of another incident that is going to be troubling to the fair-minded and human-hearted, objective person who sees it and says, what in the hell is going on there, that could operate as jet fuel on these embers? Because that's the thing. This is going to be embers. This fire is not going to go out completely, and that fire can flare up at any time if and when there's another one of these incidents. And every time we think, okay, maybe we're not going to see one of these for a while, one of these happens. And that, Shireen, at any point between Labor Day and Super Bowl Sunday, that's going to be a factor if it happens in the NFL. What will occur if there's another incident like this? You know, we're worried about COVID-19 outbreaks and false positives. Another thing to factor into what the NFL needs to be worrying about, if there's another incident like this, what is it going to do? Is it going to shut down practice? Is it going to shut down games?
The league has been fortunate so far because COVID happened during their off season, so they had months to prepare and get ready and do all the things they needed to do. They didn't lose any games to it like the other sports. And now the videos that have come out with George Floyd and Jacob Blake have happened either during their off-season program or during training camp. So again, they haven't had to make those decisions. But if these things, like you said, keep happening and one comes out, I think we've had the precedent set. I am not going to be at all surprised if we lose some or all of an NFL Sunday if something like this happens during a week and we see another video and it comes out. These players, again, have realized that they have this platform and they're a little more powerful maybe than they thought they were. And so, if this comes out again, not going to surprise me. Precedent has been set. I think now that they I don't want to say have to do it, but they would definitely lean toward not playing if something happens like this again. And let's pray to God that it doesn't.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And, we talked yesterday about where is the finish line in this effort for social justice. And you never quite know that you're there if you get to a point where these incidents stop, because we're always a news cycle away from another one. And I hope that we get to a point where we can feel tangible progress other than noticing, boy, it's been a year since the last time we saw one of these horrifying videos. Let's hear from some of the voices in the National Football League. Shireen mentioned Cliff Kingsbury, now the second-year coach of the Arizona Cardinals. Here's Kingsbury, who canceled practice before even talking to the team yesterday, explaining his decision to not have practice on Thursday.
I think as players and coaches, we have a tremendous platform, and that can help keep the spotlight, on the fact that as a country, we have issues when it comes to social injustice and racism, and that we have a problem here. And people pay attention when Doc Rivers speaks. He's a guy that I know I admire and look up to in this profession. And the other night, when he put it, it was so powerful and so eloquent. We talk about it as a team. The people are talking about that, and we have that ability to touch lives and lead by example. And I think that's what we're all trying to do. We all need to push together in the same direction, and try and help the change that we want to see.
Yeah, and that's exactly the message that needs to be sent, and that's the platform that needs to be used in that way, because it can make a difference. If enough voices are heard, if enough pressure is applied, it can make a significant difference, Shireen.
Yeah, and I think Cliff Kingsbury showed his leadership. He's young. He's barely older than these players, and he really stood up and he made the decision. But one thing that really stood out to me is he said he talked to his father, Tim. His father, Tim, is a longtime football coach who served in the Marines, served in Vietnam, and won a Purple Heart. And he asked him about players kneeling for the national anthem, and Cliff Kingsbury's dad told him, I don't see it as a sign of disrespect. I don't see it as a lack of patriotism. He said, in this situation, I think you have to respect everybody's opinion. And he said, it's just like when you stand up for the anthem, it doesn't mean that you're for racism. And when you kneel, it doesn't mean that you're against the flag and you're against patriotism. And that really stood out to me. And I think it convinced Cliff, too, of some things. And he was great. He was absolutely great yesterday. If you get a chance, go read all of his quotes.
Yeah, and a team that was great yesterday at a time where some of the teams were issuing statements. Some were very short. The Jets statement was 3 words, enough is enough. We talk about how we turn this moment into tangible action. And the Baltimore Ravens, my goodness, they wrapped a whole statement around the concept of enough is enough with clear action items that they want to see happen, starting with arresting and charging the police officers responsible for killing Breonna Taylor and for the shooting of Jacob Blake. An amazing moment for a sports team to come out and say what so many individuals are saying, and then calling out the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to bring the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2020 to the Senate floor for a vote. And, if you take away qualified immunity for police officers, that forces them to think twice before they use lethal force in situations where lethal force may not be justified, because they no longer have that shield from the legal system, Shireen, that allows them to, I hate to say it, but the old cliche, shoot first and ask questions later. because that's what they do, right? I mean, we've heard that term all our lives as kind of an over-the-top hyperbole, but with qualified immunity, that's what they're allowed to do because they don't get called out. They don't get questioned. They don't get placed in civil or criminal jeopardy because the law is slanted in a way that allows them to use lethal force in situations where, a calm, rational consideration of the facts may make lethal force not justified. And for the Ravens to pivot from words to action with specific things that need to be done, that's where this movement needs to go. It can't just be, we're upset. It has to be, we're upset, and here's what needs to happen.
Absolutely. This is bigger than a hashtag, and that's kind of what everyone has said. It's got to be more than words. It's got to be more than statements. And the Ravens, hey, if you want to know what they want done, here it is. They absolutely laid it out. And if you saw on Twitter last night after they put that out, I mean, it was one praise after another praise. And I'm sure there was some in there that had people upset. But everything I saw was, oh, my goodness, if you want to see action, here's the action. And they called for it, and they laid it out. And they said, here it is. This is what we need to do to make this better, to move on, to end racism and find some social justice. And they just laid it out there, and it was fantastic. And hopefully it leads to something. But it's not just words. It's not just words on a paper. They offered something, and I just thought it was great.
And, they say the NFL is a copycat league, right?
Yeah.
Hey, every other team,
yeah.
take that statement and, as Sims would say to me, copy, paste, just take that statement and put your name on top of it. The Ravens are not going to be upset, right? If every team, and wouldn't that be great if today every other team just took that statement and issued that same statement? That would be powerful. So to the extent any of the other teams are out there listening today, go ahead and do it. And what are the Ravens going to complain? No, they want these actions to happen. And the more people who stand up and call for those actions, the actions become more likely to happen. One of the actions that happened in Pittsburgh was practice went forward. And Mike Tomlin, who's been the coach of that team since 2007, he can read the room like no other coach can read the room. He decided to go forward. He said they didn't even consider not practicing. Here's some of what Tomlin had to say.
We desire to have an impact and more so than statements. And we want to be proactive in our behavior and our thoughts. And so we had continued conversations, not necessarily in reaction to the most recent events that have transpired. I continue to appreciate the hearts and spirits of our players in terms of wanting to participate and engage in a positive way and express themselves. That is their right. Like I've said many times, they'll continue to be supported by us as long as their efforts are done so thoughtfully and with class. And so I'm excited about continuing to grow in that area, as is our football team, and have an understanding of our platform and utilize it in a very positive and constructive way, but also understand that we're targets. And our perspectives and our opinions can be weaponized for agendas or against us. And so we want to move forward thoughtfully with everything that we do. Like we've mentioned, we're excited about being parts of solutions if we can be.
It really is a sad commentary that anyone who believes that change needs to come in this area needs to be fearful that anything they say will somehow be used against them. Right? So if you and look, we dealt with this yesterday. We're dealing with it today. My email box was flooded with equal parts praise and equal parts condemnation for using this platform to bring light to these issues and to try to affect change. But that's something that everyone in this arena is going to deal with, Shireen. Any action you take, anything that you say is potentially going to boomerang back on you, thrown at you by those who just don't believe, don't agree, and don't see the need for change.
Yeah, I found it interesting. There's 4 minority coaches in the NFL, and 2 did not practice yesterday. They chose not to. Anthony Lynn and Ron Rivera. The Dolphins were off, who have Brian Flores as their head coach, and Mike Tomlin chose to hold practice. And he does read the room as well as any head coach in the NFL, which is why he's held his job as long as he has. And so this is an example of one size doesn't fit all. Every team is different. Ben Roethlisberger said this team didn't take a vote, but they did talk about it, and they talked about it a lot. And I know every team in the NFL, I guarantee you, I don't know it for a fact, but I guarantee you all 30 teams yesterday had some sort of conversation about these issues, whether they practiced or didn't practice. And the Steelers are one of those teams that chose to practice and are going to try to take it out into the streets and do it in their communities and find solutions. Yeah, Mike Tomlin, he's been great. He's done a good job at it, and he'll continue to. But he read his room, and he read his room as that team needed to practice yesterday.
There's one specific voice in the NFL who is quickly building up the kind of equity that insulates him from criticism, and he has a way of using the platform that is not in any way threatening or hostile. It's very matter of fact, and it's Patrick Mahomes, and he's made it clear that he's going to continue to use the platform for good. Here's some of what Mahomes had to say yesterday.
They've done a good job of kind of bringing in different people to talk to us about social injustices. And then I think we've done a good job amongst each other of just getting each other's perspective, talking if that's at lunch or if that's just in any free time that we have. Because it is something that's critical in our country, is how to find a way to be better. And with the Jacob Blake shooting, I mean, it's just me and Travis were talking about it. It's just crazy, man, that this is still going on in the world that we live in today. And we're going to try to set an example in whatever way possible to show that we can get along and we can really respect one another for who they are and not the color of their skin. And we're hoping that we can get over this. I mean, it's too long. It's been too long, and we're going to try to get over this and get to where we all treat each other equally.
And Patrick, toward that end, you became a voice in the social justice movement this offseason. What inspired you to do so?
Like I said, it's just been too long. It's too much suffering. It's too much people being treated differently, and I think I was just tired of it. I think everybody's is tired of it, and it continues to happen, and we have to find a way to change. And I'm going to be a voice. I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that we change and we can make the world a better place. And whatever that takes, Travis is right along with me. We're going to make sure that we do whatever it takes to put the world in a better place.
Yeah, I think Coach said it best, man. Everybody's just got to love each other and appreciate one another for who they are, their differences, knowing that we all do have differences. We all have crazy different upbringings, the people around us, thought of mind, things like that. Like it's just everyone has to come together and appreciate everyone for who they are, man. And until we have that peace of mind.
That was Travis Kelce with Patrick Mahomes being questioned by our friend Alex Marvez of SiriusXM NFL Radio. Refreshing to see a couple of guys in a setting like that wearing their masks. Not a lot of wearing masks on TV this week, so it was good to see that. And look, Patrick Mahomes, Shireen, I firmly believe, has the power to make things happen because of how good of a player he is, because of his personality, and because of his clear, unwavering commitment to it. He doesn't care about the blowback, and I don't know how much blowback he's going to get. And as he continues to develop and mature as a player and a man, I think that as far as the NFL goes, and possibly as far as all American sports go, he could emerge as the voice to lead us through this.
Boy, hasn't he ascended quickly, because in 2 years he has become the face of the NFL, and that's what happens when you win a Super Bowl MVP and a league MVP, which he's done over the course of the last 2 years. And being the best player in the league gives him a platform, gives him a voice, and he's using that. And he's just come into the league really and taken it by storm. And I think he's a perfect voice for the NFL. I think he's going to lead this league. He's going to be the LeBron James of the league. And I know that's big saying that, because there are so few guys, especially in the NFL, that ascend to that level, that really transcend the sport. But I think he's one of those generational guys that's going to make a huge difference in so many ways, in so many areas in the NFL and in life. And I think he's going to make things better. And great guy, and he's done all the right things so far, and he's using that voice now.
And here's hoping that other young quarterbacks in the NFL don't just sit back and say, Patrick, you've got this. Because I think just like with the Ravens, as more teams say, hey, yeah, we agree with the Ravens, and here's our statement, and it's the same as what the Ravens are saying. Hopefully Mahomes inspires other young players, especially quarterbacks, because they're the leaders on the field, to follow him and not just say, go ahead, Patrick, but to say, we're right with you shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, and I think it needs to be a lot of the white quarterbacks, and we saw it with Ryan Tannehill yesterday and a handful of others who stood up there and stood with them and said the right things. And so, yeah, it's got to be the quarterbacks because they're the guys, they're the faces, they are who we talk about, so they need to be the ones leading this charge. And Mahomes is the leader of the leaders, but those other quarterbacks need to step up too and come to the forefront and be big in this.
And look, it's not just the teams, it's not just the players. The league office needs to be part of this as well. And Troy Vincent, the executive VP of football operations, was on ESPN radio yesterday, and he was emotional. His comments were powerful, and it brings back a point that we made just about at this same moment yesterday, that it's not necessarily concern about what happens to you, it's concern about what happens to your children, because your children are eventually turned loose into the world. And if you are a parent of black children and you have to have that fear every time they leave your sight, every time they pull away in a car, and you don't know what's going to happen to them if there's an interaction with police, that is terrifying, it's horrifying, and I think that is, for many of the adult males in the sports world who have children who are black, that is the concern. And there is no greater concern than that. If you haven't heard what Troy Vincent had to say yesterday, the emotion in his voice, the passion in his voice, I recommend you tracking it down and listening to that audio.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.